In the last 200 years, three of the most powerful militaries on Earth have marched into this country. The British Empire, the Soviet Union, the United States. All three had more soldiers, more weapons, and more money, and all three left in defeat. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this one stretch of mountains has broken every empire that's ever tried to rule it. This isn't just a story about war, it's a story about geography, because the terrain here is so extreme that it doesn't just slow armies down, it defeats them. But here's what nobody talks about. It's not just about the mountains. It's about how this land was built, almost on purpose, to punish anyone who tries to control it from the outside. From the Persian Empire under Darius I to Alexander the Great, and subsequently the Mongol and Mughal empires, the region known today as Afghanistan has historically been the most contested crossroads on the planet. However, modern-era empires made the fundamental mistake of attempting centralized control over a territory where power has always resided in decentralized local structures. Let's start with the basics. Afghanistan sits at the crossroads of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. That sounds like a good thing. Trade routes, connections, opportunity. But here's the twist. That same location made it the hallway every invading army had to walk through to get somewhere else. Not the destination, the hallway. And the hallway is brutal. Over half the country is covered by the Hindu Kush, mountains that reach over 24,000 feet, roughly 4.5 miles straight up. For comparison, that's higher than most planes fly on a regional route. There are almost no flat roads. Supply trucks can't move fast. Helicopters struggle in the thin air, and every valley is a natural ambush point. This wasn't a coincidence. Empires that succeeded elsewhere, flat plains, rivers, coastlines, had no answer for terrain like this. You can't out-tank a mountain. Physiographically, the Hindu Kush acts as an almost impenetrable climatic and physical barrier during the winter months. Massive snowfalls block mountain passes, such as the infamous Khyber Pass or the modern-day Salang Tunnel, completely isolating entire regions and forcing any military force to rely on aerial supply lines that remain vulnerable to extreme weather conditions and light anti-aircraft fire from the insurgency. The first superpower to learn this the hard way was the British Empire in 1839. At the time, Britain controlled nearly a quarter of the entire planet. They had the most feared navy in the world and a massive, well-funded army. They marched into Afghanistan to block Russian influence in the region, a rivalry historians call the Great Game. They won the first battles easily. They captured the capital, and then it fell apart. In 1842, roughly 16,000 British soldiers and civilians tried to retreat through a single mountain pass in winter. Local fighters, who knew every rock and ridge in that terrain, picked them off for days. By the end, only one man made it out alive to tell the story. One man, out of 16,000. That's not a battle. That's a warning that the entire world should have paid attention to. And didn't. That lone survivor who reached the British garrison in Jalalabad was Dr. William Brydon, who arrived wounded and mounted on a dying horse. The disaster of the 1842 Kabul retreat represented one of the greatest military humiliations in the history of the British Empire, proving in the most tragic way that technological and numerical superiority in muzzle-loading weaponry and artillery was utterly useless against freezing weather and the guerrilla warfare tactics of the Pashtun tribes. Now here's the part that should have been impossible. The exact same mistake happened again, almost 140 years later. In 1979, the Soviet Union, one of the two most powerful nations on Earth during the Cold War, invaded Afghanistan to prop up a friendly government. The USSR, or Soviet Union, was a massive communist state that included Russia and over a dozen other countries, and at the time it was locked in a decades-long rivalry with the United States called the Cold War. The Soviets had helicopters, tanks, and one of the largest militaries ever assembled, and they still couldn't hold the countryside. Local fighters, using the same mountains that beat the British a century earlier, fought a war of ambush and retreat for 9 years. By 1989, the Soviets withdrew. Some historians argue the financial and political cost of that war helped push the Soviet Union toward collapse just 2 years later. During the Soviet occupation, the introduction of FYM-92 Stinger surface-to-air missiles provided by the United States to the Mujahideen radically shifted the balance of power in the skies. The Mi-24 Hind attack helicopters, which until then had dominated the valleys uncontested, began to be regularly shot down, neutralizing the USSR's primary strategic mobility advantage. And then, in 2001, it happened a third time. The United States entered Afghanistan after the September 11th attacks, aiming to remove the Taliban government and eliminate the terrorist network responsible. NATO, a military alliance of the US, most of Europe, and Canada, built to defend member countries together, joined the effort. For 20 years, the US and its allies poured in trillions of dollars, the most advanced weapons ever built, and hundreds of thousands of troops. And in 2021, the withdrawal ended with the same government collapsing within days. 3 different centuries, 3 completely different types of armies, from horse cavalry to helicopters to drone strikes. Same result. Despite possessing the most advanced satellite surveillance technology, artificial intelligence, and consistent precision air power, international coalition forces faced the exact same socio-political reality: a complex web of tribal loyalties, economies based on opium poppy cultivation, and a porous border with Pakistan that served as a perpetual, unreachable sanctuary for insurgents. So why does this keep happening? It's not bad luck, and it's not one mistake repeated 3 times by 3 different governments. It's the land itself. The mountains break supply lines. The valleys favor whoever already knows the terrain. And the tribal and regional structure of the country means there's rarely one single government you can defeat to end the resistance. You're fighting dozens of local networks at once, each with its own loyalty to the land, not to any capital city. This is what geography actually means in the real world. It's not just lines on a map, it's the reason the most powerful militaries in human history all made the exact same choice, and all paid the exact same price. Ultimately, Afghanistan demonstrates the geopolitical theory that fragmented mountainous terrain always favors the decentralized defender over the centralized invader. Local authority structures based on the Pashtunwali tribal system operate autonomously, rendering the capture of a capital city or the signing of treaties with a central government entirely irrelevant to halting local community resistance. Leave a comment. Which of these 3 empires do you think should have known better? And if this changed how you think about geography and power, make sure to like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories about the places shaping our world.